Today on Lightning Bugs.
When you do a live take of something as a musician, you have to take the good with the bad.
Yeah.
And it's not the mistakes that make it special. It's the moments after the mistakes.
So I taught self-defense a lot over 2018, 2019, pre-pandemic. And I remember one of my students, he practically almost stabbed me with the knife. And it was that moment, yeah, right. Like, because a knife defense is really hard, right? Like, it's you're more likely to get stabbed than not, and it doesn't matter how good you are at self-defense. And but we just made that mistake part of the show. Like, we made it really cool, so we just kind of had to change the performance on the spot. You perform better with that pressure of an audience.
Yeah,
I know I do.
So. Yeah.
I think I bring more of myself to the table because there's only one shot.
Hi, if you're enjoying listening to Lightning Bugs, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps a lot.
Dr. Andrea Wheatly is perhaps an unusual choice for a podcast on creativity. She's an 8th grade black belt in Filipino Martial Arts, and she's an osteopath. She's done fine in both fields. She's a multiple-time world champion in Filipino Stick-fighting. If there was a championship of osteopathy, I'm confident Andrea would have multiple medals in that as well. I met her through her work as an osteopath, and I can't say I've met a more talented healer. Luckily, I haven't met her in the ring. Though I've told her since 2007 that I'd certainly kick her ass, I'm not sure she's amused. Easily said from the other side of the globe. So personally, as an artist, what inspires me about Andrea and her life is her courage, curiosity, open-mindedness, and willingness to work beyond pain, to reinvent and find a path. Many artists would be well advised to take note. As she worked on the neck issue I had 15 years ago, she told me her martial arts mentor, or sensei or master, whatever the fuck you call it, said, "Andrea, you spent your life taking people apart. You should spend the next chapter putting people back together." Is that right?
Yeah.
On one occasion, I got wonderful news that she'd taken a Filipino stick-fighting championship in her own weight, and if I remember right, a few weight limits up as well. We'll go to that later. Months later, I was sad to hear from Andrea that again she was rendered paralyzed with no clear path to ever walk again. And of course, she beat that as well as the rest of the stick fighters on the planet again. All the while reinventing herself as a person and putting people back together from Australia to Europe. Let's try and get 1 ounce of this greatness in our creative endeavors. Kids, a round of applause for my friend, Andrea Wheatly.
Thanks, Ben.
Okay. Can you correct anything that I might have gotten wrong in your bio? Since
No, that's fine. I guess that's a pretty good summary of it's been a tumultuous journey, but it's been exciting and it's been challenging, and the ups and downs have been extreme. So a roller coaster is probably a cliche, but a pretty accurate way to describe the past few years, particularly the past decade. It's been awesome.
Well, put on your, I guess, your teacher head for a second, and let's think about people who make stuff and what they can get out of it. Because I think that often in the world of, in life in general, but in the world of art, making art, it's really easy to be super safe. Yeah. And I think what I was trying to get across in that is that the roller coaster is because you made it a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Like that's the way you roll roller coaster.
Yeah.
Can we hone in on my fuzzy memory of how you got yourself better? Because that's serious business, not being able to walk.
Yeah.
So can you walk me through that story again? Because that's pretty amazing.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I had 2 concomitant diseases. So 2 processes going on in my body that were supposedly unrelated, but happened at the same time. And so, I kind of went from, I think I'd won at this stage maybe 6 world titles. So like 2006, 2007, 2009, representing Spain. 2010, I'm in Spain. I was teaching, and I started to notice a change in my leg. Really, I was cycling up a hill with a friend and couldn't keep up, which, we weren't competing, but it was losing power. I was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with this awesome, inspiring teacher, Ronaldo Ribeiro, from Brazil. And again, something strange was happening in my leg, like a sensation that I couldn't pinpoint, I couldn't identify. But yeah, sort of fast track to 2011, and I was running 10 kilometers, which was my usual distance, and that leg was collapsing underneath me. So clearly something was wrong. And I think everyone goes through a level of denial, whether it's conscious or not, where you just keep going. And I'm someone who historically, prior to this experience, I could use willpower to push through anything.
Right.
So I didn't know how to deal with something where, like a nerve injury, you can't use willpower. You can't push through that. It doesn't work. And so I'm probably going to go all over the place answering your question, but
this is great. So it was a nerve injury.
So it was an illness that damaged the three major nerves to the leg. So sciatic, femoral, and obturator. So basically all of the motor and sensory function to one of my legs was disturbed. And that went from my torso through my hip, through my thigh, knee, calf, ankle, foot. So the whole limb. And so I was basically immobilized for a period of 3 months with another disease going on at the same time. So it gets a little bit complicated to tease it out. But the leg paralysis was happening. It's called lumbosacral plexopathy. So it's plexopathy. Plexus is the bunch of nerves that come out of your spine and travel down your leg and go all the way to your toes. And so instead of being like a nerve root injury, which some people have with a disc injury, this was actually at the plexus level. So those nerves are exiting the spine, and there it is. The disease process affected those nerves. So yeah, basically lost the ability to walk. Couldn't feel any sensation in different parts of my leg, but I guess
how long between when you were because to my perception it was really quick.
The onset was pretty aggressive. Yeah. Sorry, Ben.
So how long until you were having a hard time keeping up on the bike, and then then you're rendered, then you're not walking. How long a period was that?
About 6 months. So it would have been January. They were Christmas bikes, I remember, in Barcelona. So we would have been taking a Sunday ride up a mountain, and that leg just wasn't putting out. And I was used to my legs being like pistons. I could jump high in a stick fight, or I could do anything really. I could run up the mountains in Switzerland, which I often did during my study days. And so all of a sudden that power wasn't there. That was January. And then I was back in Melbourne in April and trying to run 10K. That leg was collapsing. There was no point. And then it was about June, early June, I could no longer hold the pedal on the brake driving the car. So I would drive, but put the handbrake on. And then I was like, something's wrong. But then I was, because you just keep going, right? Which sounds crazy, but I'm someone who always finds a way around.
No, it doesn't.
So, but then the other disease hit like a freight train, and that had me bedridden 7 weeks in a life-threatening stage. So pulse rate, 140 beats a minute, 24/7, losing massive amounts of weight, particularly muscle, because it causes proximal myopathy. So that disease hit at the same time. Digestion's going fast. You're eating huge amounts every day and not putting on weight. And so it's a hypermetabolic state. That disease happened at the same time. So the management became a focus on that.
Do you think they were related? Were they related in retrospect?
So, discussing this with both the endocrinologist and the neurologist, they were related in time. They can't see a causative connection. So they're called concomitant illnesses. They were occurring simultaneously, but not known. There's no history of those two things happening together as far as I know.
Yeah.
But this was like a whole new playing field to, so actually just getting back to that question, the leg wasn't diagnosed for 6 more months. So I missed the window of opportunity to treat that. In June, everything hit. I was 3 months bedridden, and then 3 months learning to just get around with mobility aids. I managed to start driving like 6 months later, so December 2011, but very limited. I had to take a job where I couldn't walk 700 meters, but I could drive 700 meters. Things like that. So I just think, in terms of the path to recovery, I think of my favorite Spanish poet is Antonio Machado, and he writes Caminante no hay camino, which is there is no road, traveler, there is no road. And, we can think of that in the literal sense, but also in the metaphoric sense that it wasn't me alone. There was so much collaboration, but I had to create a path out of this.
Create your own path. Yeah.
Yeah, there was so few medical papers published about lumbosacral plexopathy in 2011. Now you look it up, there's multiple. But back then there was probably a study in Japan, and it really only discussed treatment when it was picked up early on, whereas my diagnosis happened 6 months after the fact because of the other thing, hiding the picture. So
yeah. Well, to make a weak thread over to our creativity podcast, I think that those things are inspiring. Well, it's not inspiring you being ill, but what you said about there's not a path, and there's not a book on it.
Mm-mm.
And I think that when people are creating, what they don't realize is they're alone when they're doing it right.
Yeah.
That's your path. There's no one wrote a fucking book for you.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. And I suppose that's part of what I get just out of how you operate. In this time, so you were a little bit in denial about driving a car and riding a bike. What were you thinking about the possibilities of both your jobs, both your fields, stick fighting, martial arts, and where was your mind then? If someone had asked you about those things, then at what point did you hit a point where you're like, oh shit, I can't do these things again?
I just never entertained the idea of can't. And again, there's probably huge levels of denial there, but there was a lot of change in my life. I'd moved from Spain back to Melbourne. I hadn't lived in Melbourne for 13 years. I had a job as an osteopath with a mentor of mine. She's amazing. She and her husband ran a clinic in Melbourne, and I just wanted to go back to normal. I think we all have when something goes so far into chaos, we try to bring back some sense of normality, some sense of routine. I could work as an osteopath because I had my hands, and that was fascinating in itself because I would sit on my chair in my office and my receptionist would send the patients in and I'd send them out, but I never got off my chair. And I don't think many people picked up on that, or maybe I looked a little less friendly because I wasn't walking out and greeting everyone. But, I just masked it, I guess, in order to keep going. My hands could still work, which actually during the other illness, they didn't. I couldn't use any of my limbs. Have you talked to any patients and found they were surprised that you were pulling, like what I'm hearing is like an FDR, President Roosevelt was, I think it was polio. They were standing him up. He was in incredible pain. Yeah. He wasn't really able, and he was sort of able to pull one over on everyone for multiple terms. Yeah. Have you talked to any of your patients and found that they were like surprised that you were actually? Look, one of the beautiful things about being in the same place now for over a decade, I remember treating a baby. He would have been 6 months of age, and he's still my patient now. So,
how old is he now?
He's 10. And he and his brother and his parents come down to this clinic. I'm in a different location. And, I've mentioned it to them, and I think they're oblivious. I was in that treatment room, and they brought the kid in and took the kid out to the front desk. And, it's, I had my left leg to push me around the table. It's interesting, just that whole process of I wasn't in pain. You just spoke about Roosevelt. I was fortunate I had no pain. The receptors for temperature, pain, and they're very close together in touch in the brain map. So the wiring can actually get crossed over as well, which is also part of my recovery. It was fascinating because I was teasing out all these aspects. We're not just talking about motor function. We're talking about sensation, proprioception, balance, postural stability, the fact that you lose more slow twitch fibers. They're harder to get back, right, than fast twitch.
Yes, and this and okay, tell me if I'm high on crack cocaine here or if I'm remembering it right.
Right.
But didn't you have someone, and maybe it was your sister, someone pushing you in a wheelchair on the beach and catapulting you out because you could run before you could walk? Is that crazy, or did you tell me that?
It's a little bit crossed over with a couple of different stories, but I love the imagery. I'm getting some really cool imagery. I think we just need a piano piece to accompany it. I'm thinking of Bethel's Beach in New Zealand, the black sand, where the movie The Piano was. Anyway, sorry, I digress.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful movie.
Beautiful area of New Zealand. Okay, so the story, those stories are just a bit mashed up, but that's understandable. Okay. There's so many aspects to this. So no, with the other illness,
I'm creative.
No, it's cool. It's cool. So there's like 2 illnesses going on 2011. Mm-hmm. I get over one of them. It took 12 to 18 months, and I have the leg paralysis at the end of it. So that took me 3 years to be able to walk. But as you correctly point out, there are some motor functions that are established in the brain map that in stroke rehabilitation, those brain map functions, the higher functions, are used rather than just trying to walk, because walking is one of the most difficult activities to perform. So I had an incredible physio.
It is for me.
Yeah. I had an incredible physio, and she determined that if we could pick out my most established brain maps, which were sprinting and stick-fighting, that I would be able to perform those at some point in my recovery. We're talking 2.5 years into the whole thing.
Okay.
So we're talking 6 months basically bedridden, then mobility aids, which brought a whole new level of, a whole new level of experience in terms of multiple strangers asking intrusive questions about, why is this young person in a wheelchair? Why is this young person walking with 2 sticks or 1 stick, or limping with a profound limp? So you sort of all these layers of that going on. But yes, my sister pushed me around in a wheelchair for the other illness 3 times. So 2011, 2014, 2017. So the beach, that would have been 2013. And at that point, I was walking with a profound limp, but my physio said, you need to go back and do sprinting. You've got these fascial slings that go left arm, right leg, and vice versa. And your height, your motor pattern, the motor cortex knows sprinting. And so I could actually do a sprint on the beach and then go back to limping, like walking with a profound limp. So for anyone looking on, I would have looked like I was faking it. Likewise with stick fighting. Yeah. And stick fighting at the end of 2013, again, that physio had said you need to use stick fighting so that we can get walking back. So I had one of my students, he's actually just completed his black belt this year. So he's been training with me for about 8.5 years. And he would step in the ring new to stick fighting, and I would go absolutely ballistic, like literally beat the crap out of him. Sorry, but that's the explosive nature of stick fighting. And then I would limp out again. And so, using those motor functions was a pathway back to starting to use the other more what seems basic, but it's not.
Well, it reminds me a little bit of music therapy, which, a real simple example would be the movie, the King's Speech, where people can sing things, but they can't speak them. So you're accessing part of your nervous system that gives you a direct, something that you understand. And music is something that most people, I guess, their brains understand. Absolutely. So that's interesting. In dementia patients who they put on headphones or they sing. A good example is the country artist. He's kind of country crossover artist. Is a legend, Glenn Campbell, who at the end of his life, severe dementia, would play a show, play his ass off, play every note perfectly, walk off stage, he's sweating, and he would ask the people around him, why am I sweating? What did I just do?
Yeah.
He didn't even know where he was. He couldn't connect most sentences together or remember a day, but he could go out and play his ass off. Is that sort of related?
Absolutely. So neuroplasticity is really what we're talking about. And, you know, so there was a book I read by Norman Doidge back in, it would have been 2012. And it was directly relating to the sorts of things that you're talking about. And I've seen that with Parkinson's patients as well. They use boxing, and they can go in and they can do a fabulous boxercise or cardio boxing session. And then they shuffle gait again, you know, or ride a bicycle. And I've seen that also with dementia patients. You know, there was a chap who, I think this was in Melbourne, if I remember correctly, and they brought his whole band in from about 30 years ago. He was in his 80s, and they jammed and they played an incredible session. I think he was playing piano, and then similar to what you're saying. So the brain is incredible, and you know, I think that's part of the thing as well, is that we're only at the edge of understanding neuroplasticity, and so a lot of the methods that I incorporated back in 2012 and 2013 were quite new. Mirror therapy, which I use down the track, where you literally visualize. That? Yeah, so that's a later progress or progression. I would visualize my good leg in the mirror doing something.
Okay.
And then I would, and then my brain, because it's a mirror, my brain thought it was my bad leg. So then it starts to create a pathway in the brain. They do it again with people who have had a stroke. They put a mirror vertically and use one arm, and the brain looks at the mirror image and thinks it's the affected arm. So again, it's just starting to wire neurons, and and then visualization, which is so important. You know, I'd always use that for martial arts. I think everyone uses visualization, creative visualization to a point. You know, and then you look at people like chess players who play mental chess. There was that chap who was a political prisoner for 9 years and spent 400 days in solitary confinement. And he used to play both the black and the white. And after he was released from prison, he played a world champion chess player, and he defeated him. So that pattern of visualization is so powerful. You know, in terms of recovery, you know, I would visualize myself running in the Swiss mountains, which is what I used to do. But it was really deeply visualizing, like I would know the smells and the sounds and the terrain in detail. Stick fighting the same.
I think the reason all that appeals, all these like many parables and many lessons and dramas that they don't have to do with art, literally, are exactly what I think most artists need, which is why I want to keep anyone who's listening continuing to draw a parallel between their creative endeavors and all of this. I mean, it all applies. Creative visualization. Well, there's one. And the thing is about life and death is it is life and death. Like you're talking about not being able to walk, or being able to walk, or a possible illness that could pretty much at least end your life the way that you want to live it.
Yeah.
But in the creative world, if you don't operate as if it is life and death, you're just going to make a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
Like you really have to. It all has to be out on the line. Do you is there? If you put your teacher head on again, what would you tell a class of musicians or artists? How would you take your life and the things you've learned and apply it there? Because there's a lot of creativity in what you're talking about, but it's not necessarily, you know, resulting in a painting or a piece of music or anything. It's resulting in an artistically lived life. Yeah. Do you have, can I put you on the spot to any ideas that you would have to what you would tell mere creative people?
Yeah, look, I think that the majority of us use very little of what we're capable of. And I think when things are taken away physically, and obviously there's a whole lot of other annihilation that comes, with not being able to work, not being able to walk, not being able to drive a car, not being able to express myself as a martial artist, all of those things. I'll just digress again, as I tend to do. But one of the things that happened in 2011 when I was stuck in that bed, my Spanish improved. So, I thought I was fairly fluent, but that improved dramatically. I started writing left-handed poetry.
Whoa. What do you mean?
So I'm ambidextrous, but I couldn't use my right. In the other illness that was occurring at the same time, I couldn't use my hands, but my left fingers were working. So I was doing left-handed finger painting, and I'm not an artist. I have a very good friend who's currently in Hong Kong who is an artist, and she always encourages me to use color, etc. But anyway, back then I was finger painting. I was writing poetry with my left hand because that's all I had. I only had the fingers of my left hand or my eyes.
If you're making these things, why do you think you're not an artist?
I see myself as a martial artist,
right?
Because I express myself, through movement. But I can see how you see that as artistic. I can see that. I think I don't go for labels much. I never have.
Right.
I don't go for boxes. I love the lyrics of an Ani DeFranco song that I don't go in any box on any shelf. But that's okay. I think we can call it art for sure. And so I think people don't use their optimum. So there's different ways of accessing that. And I'm sure as a musician, you would have multiple ways of accessing talent that might be buried or ways of expressing yourself. And it doesn't have to be through being deprived of physical movement, but it could be. So,
well, it could. It often has to do with limitations. That's for sure.
Yeah.
How can you work within this? Here's your new situation.
That's it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've used this example so many times. Anyone who's ever talked to me for 5 minutes has heard this example, but Leonard Cohen, he was playing shows and writing songs up until his last days.
Yeah.
And his ability to sing wasn't, he wasn't Jeff Buckley from the get-go. And in his best time, he had, 6 notes. That's a lot, 5 or 6 notes in his range. I had the privilege to see him when he was left with 2 notes.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was fucking great. It was probably amazing. Better than when he had 6 notes because he had to consider how to use those 2 notes. He was faced with the, reality that his voice was not going to go lower or higher. It wasn't going to go louder or softer. What did he have to say? And he did that with 2 notes. And that's chilling when you hear it.
Yeah, I saw Leonard Cohen in South Australia at a winery. It was an outdoor event. It would have been about 2008. So again, in his autumn years, incredible though. Just, really moving performance. And that's it. I think take things away, strip things back. Like I don't see myself as an artist other than in the martial arts, but I hear about painters and they're scared to commit to the paper. They're scared to make that first.
Yeah, that's right.
It's, I think, liberating that, finding a way to free that up, whatever that might be, because there's so much more to us than we really know. And just fear is paralyzing. And, I think everyone needs to step into the ring and just face it because you're really only facing yourself, right? So, and I mean that as a metaphor. I don't mean that. I don't mean everyone should have a full contact fight, but I think people need to just show more courage and step into it because this is our one life, right? Like in this lifetime. And
do you think you live a better and more creative life because of the illness and the physical shit you've had to go through?
I think it's deeper and I think it's richer. And I think that makes it better. I think, if I think back, I don't know if anyone's seen the film by Quentin Tarantino, Kill Bill, but if you look at Irma Thurman sitting in the back of the pussy wagon, and she's instructing herself to wiggle her big toe, right? Because she's been in a coma for 5 years and her legs aren't working. I relate to that so much, that concept of, if that's all you've got, work it. If the big toe is what you've got to work on it. Because I had to do that for all the muscles in my feet and all the aspects of every aspect of movement through the pelvis and the knee and everything else. And so I think, as painful as it is to be stripped away, to have those things stripped away from you, or, you can see something as a disability or you can see it as a gift. And I think if it would do everyone a great service to strip things away on a routine basis and see what's left, see what you can bring to the table when you actually...
because what we'd like to do is, like, you had to go through all that crap, and hopefully don't have to go through it again. But what we, what would be nice is if we can figure out a way that other people don't have to go through it, can get it. How do you suppose that's bottled without the experience of being that humbled, that many things taken away from you at once? What do you imagine of an artist that just is like, I got an easy enough life. I got writer's block. Like, what would you say to that person?
Yeah, like, shift your landscape, and that tends to be your internal landscape, right? But you could do that by using something external, like stepping out into nature or expanding. I find that you can either compress your energy or your thought process, or you can expand and go to infinity, where everything's eternal. And you just got to shapeshift. And I think everyone can do that. And I think, at some point in life, maybe not right now, but at some point in life, we're all going to be hit with adversity. And that might be losing a loved one. That might be, seeing someone that you really care about go through, a process of cancer and dying, as I witnessed with one of my best friends last year and many others. And at some point, we're all going to be annihilated. So it's like finding that power within you and expressing that, and not succumbing to blocks or, of course there's going to be blocks. Of course there's going to be moments when we're not creatively flowing or, I think that I have
kind of what I get out of that. No. What I
Mm.
kind of get out of that is kind of abstract. When you do a live take of something as a musician, you have to take the good with the bad.
Yeah.
And it's not the mistakes that make it special. It's the moments after the mistakes. If you fuck up as a musician while you're playing, I mean, really, you can think of it two ways. In the digital era, you can make a mistake and then just give up, because you know that you can do another take and another take and another take and another take. But actually, since life don't work that way, you don't get another take. There's something about the live performance that is metaphorically correct. And what I like about those live takes is reminds me of a little bit of the perspective that I get from you, which is that if you take a dip, you've taken a dip. But right after that, without that dip, you wouldn't have gotten the stuff that you get after it. So when you hear a live take and you hear the mistake, I don't like the mistake. I hate mistakes. Yeah. But what I love about them is that they make you fearless. Because you've already fucked up. And if you know you've only got one chance, you make the mistake and you go, oop, I better cover that up and make this amazing. If you think you've got a second chance, then you just go, start the tape again. And in life, you don't get that.
There's so much parallel with what you're saying to martial arts. And so I taught self-defense a lot over 2018, 2019, pre-pandemic. Girls in a high school and women all around Melbourne. And, like a lot of people are looking at things like computer games, and you get a second chance, you get a third chance. Maybe that's the way that they've grown up. But on the street, when someone attacks you, you don't get another chance. You've got one moment, and it's your life, or, or not. And it's the same on a stage performing martial art demos. My students and I have performed at the Queen Victoria Market a few times with a nice crowd in some of the cultural festivals. And I remember one of my students, he practically almost stabbed me with the knife. And it was that moment. Yeah, right. Like, because a knife defense is really hard, right? Like, it's you're more likely to get stabbed than not, and it doesn't matter how good you are at self-defense. And but we just made that mistake part of the show. Like, we made it really cool, so we just kind of had to change the performance on the spot because people were watching
to accommodate for profuse bleeding. yeah. Look, there's always that, but I think live shows and putting yourself, I think you actually bring more of yourself. You perform better with that pressure of an audience. Yeah.
I know I do.
So. Yeah.
I think I bring more of myself to the table because there's only one shot, so the mental rehearsal's there and the spaciousness is there and the ability to surrender and just go with the flow. Particularly, again, martial arts, if you've got multiple attackers, you're not using your cerebral mind. It's more ephemeral. You've got to be in that really open space because you're reacting. You can't pre-plan. So that spontaneity, I think that comes best in a live performance where you don't have second takes, third takes,
Yeah. We want to take I take one or two questions from the audience, the peanut gallery each time. So if our producers are still awake, I would like to ask them to roll the tape so we can answer some questions.
Sure.
Hey, Ben. I've been able to make a living off of music for about 12 years now. I just got a job as a pipe organist and choir director at a church, both of which I have zero experience doing. And I'm not even a churchy person, so I kind of feel like a huge fraud. I didn't hide my lack of experience, but I might have overstated my ability to pick it up quickly. And I'm just wondering if you have any advice on how to not feel so fucking terrified taking on a new opportunity that doesn't play to your strengths, let's say. Thank you so much. I really love everything that you're doing. Big fan. I'll take my answer off the air.
Awesome. Can you play that again?
Hey, Ben. I've been able to make a living off of music for about 12 years now.
Okay, you can stop it.
Got a job.
I couldn't tell if he said he had been able to make a living or he hadn't, which I think is key. And then when he played it again, I couldn't tell what he said.
I think he said he has been able to, but now he's shifted careers or focus.
Okay. Yeah, and there's a lot to wonder about that. I mean, because if it's because, for instance, you could make a living because you were able to travel and now you had kids and you can't travel and you've taken this job. Regardless, one, my instinct is on this one is that it's really cool that you've accepted the gig, because my instinct is that you're going to nail it and you're going to learn something. The thing is, that's not always true. I mean, a lot of times, you know, it's fraudulent to say, I can do a thing, and then you actually can't. You actually can't do it. But I got such great inspiration from a master class back in college from Paul Schaefer of The Tonight Show, who worked under David Letterman, because he kept saying he wanted so badly to immigrate from Canada to the U.S. He needed to work in the U.S. And every time someone said, can you do this? He would say, yes. Can you dance? Yeah. Can you do this act? Yeah. And eventually it worked out for him, because everything that he took on, he just was talented enough and spent enough time getting good at it to pull it off enough. And he's an interesting person, and that interesting person came through. I don't have any words of wisdom, but I would say that you're going to have, it sounds like you're going to have to work really hard. And the only catch in this is you not being a churchy person. So you're going to have to relate to your audience. You can't perform for an audience who you have some sort of contempt for. So you're really going to have to understand why someone would need your services and what they need out of religion. I'm not a religious person myself, but if I were playing organ or if I were choir directing or something, I would really need to relate to that, because otherwise I think that would be the fraudulent chain in the link. Sounds like you're going to have to do a lot of homework. And the other side of it is that you're going to have an incredible amount of empathy and understanding for the very churchy people who have spent their lives being churchy while you have spent your life not being churchy. You got to find a way to relate to them. And I think that if you're present and you respect them and you've done your homework, that you'll play the fucking shit out of some Jesus music. That's what I think. I had a moment where I was playing a gig, and this is in my memoir, but I was playing a gig that I didn't have a lot of respect for. It was a polka gig. It was a solo polka gig, and I just wanted to make the money, and I was bored. And I had a couple who were parapsychologists, and I didn't know what that is. I kind of got an idea of what that was. I think they were probably Fruit Loops, but they told me something that was really, really cool, which is they sensed that I didn't respect the audience. They sensed that I was bored and that I had a lot of responsibility. I'm in a room with 40 people in it. That's my audience. And those 40 people have lived their lives and done important things to the most important 40 of the most important people in the world to them. And they come into my space and I'm putting out this bored vibe. And what they were telling me was that if I'm performing for people, I need to understand that I have a great responsibility to have some empathy and understand who the audience is. And as Fruit Loopy as I still think they probably were, that actually had a great impact on me. So if I could pass that along, I would say that. I don't know. Have you got any words of wisdom for the man? Andrea?
I think there's a saying, and it sounds terrible, but there's a saying, fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah.
And there's some truth in that, because I think we're all capable, and it's sometimes out of our comfort zone or out of our familiar environment. But if you have, again, what you're talking about, bringing some sense of authentic presence and listening, there's a beautiful concept in Indigenous cultures in Australia where the act of learning is actually about listening and waiting. So as much as you're giving something through your performance, I think hearing the people that you're playing for, and you're talking about empathy, you're saying, yeah, but trust yourself as well, because you wouldn't be in that role if you weren't supposed to be.
Well, that's the thing. You said yes.
You said yes.
He said yes. So he needs to understand his audience, suck it up, and play your churchy ass off, and you probably learn something in the process. I played this thing one time. I was backstage. It was really one of these shameful, really lucrative, shitty gigs for an insurance company. And right as I was backstage about to, all I had to do was go on and play for 45 minutes and collect a big check. So I took the gig. And as right before I stepped on stage, my handler at that show, who was I guess it was insurance person or producer of some kind, said, I hope you don't fail as badly as Chris Isaak did. Chris Isaac's like, he's great. I was like, well, how did he fail? And she said, well, he was horrible. He was filthy. He was singing about sex. And I was like, do you know who you just, what do you mean? That upset the audience. I'm like, yeah, this is a very, very conservative audience. They don't like dirty words. They don't like anything like that. And I was like, I don't know why you hired me to do this, because half my songs have fucks and shits in them. And there's all kinds of stuff in my music. And this was 2 seconds before I went on. So basically I went on stage and I looked around the audience of seated people all over 70 years old. And I tried to kind of understand what they did and why they were there. And I admitted who I was right off the bat. I said, like, look, I got hired for this job and I know I play piano, but I'm pretty irreverent. And I say lots of dirty words I know you've heard before, but you might not appreciate. But I have 2 children and they're awesome. And I bet you have kids. I'm going to start off singing my songs about my kids. I'm going to try to sneak some shits and fucks in because I know you've heard those words before. So I just spoke to them like they were people. And I had the most interesting show as a result of being honest about who I was and realizing that I probably was the wrong person for the wrong gig. I think that's one of my best gigs. And all these people like 75 years old, conservative, gun-toting Republicans, church going, totally not my vibe, came backstage and we just had awesome talks about it. I don't know if that helps you, man, but if it does, take it away. One of the things I do on this podcast is I have my guests come up with an exercise. Did they prep you about this?
No, but that's okay.
Okay. All right. It's called New Week's Resolution.
Mm-hmm.
And what it means is like a New Year's resolution. For this week, I will do this following thing for the week.
Mm-hmm.
Like an exercise like that you would give artists to do for a week. It doesn't have to be complicated. Mm-hmm. Something achievable that we can all do. I do them as well. And your theory is that if you do this for a week, you might get a little different perspective on your art.
Yeah, okay. I think given the conversation we've just had, the concept of using your non-dominant side to access part of yourself. So whether it might be, and this is a simplistic way, we can alter it. I think I've got 2 exercises. Is that okay?
Okay, awesome. Give us 2.
All right, so you've got a choice. So the first one would be, so most people are kind of existing in their heads a lot. So integrating mind and body, perhaps if you're very right dominant, using your left hand to write poetry or to paint or to write your song lyrics. It might be messy, but not attaching to the details of perfectionism of your handwriting, but allowing it to come through you. Allow it to come through you rather than controlling it and, again, controlling the outcome. See what comes out. Because I think we can access more of ourselves. That's just a very simplistic way of doing it. Is that okay for the first one? So you're
saying, well, no, it's okay, but we need to be drilled down a little bit more. Does that mean that once a day you're to sit down for X number of minutes and write with your opposite hand?
So it could be write or paint or however you normally creatively express yourself. So, you know, because ultimately everyone's going to have an injury in their life at some point, whether it's a knee injury or something. And
you're going to have to use something that you're not good at.
Yeah, and then there's the potential of not being able to use your body at all and knowing that you're more than your body. So, just trying to express something creative using a non-dominant side. Now, that could be really frustrating. So I have another one, which is more about...
Oh, but I like that. And I would like to not give someone an out. Like, I don't really want to give them an out. I think they should... I think that the exercise should be... And tell me if you...
No, I like it.
If this works for you, 15 minutes a day. That's a lot of time.
It's a lot of time.
I think it takes 15 minutes because you pick up something with your wrong hand and 5 minutes of it is not dropping the tool. But either paint or write, make something that didn't exist before you sat down. Let it be shitty.
Yeah.
And do it with your opposite hand for 15 minutes, and then you get to walk up. You get to stand up and walk away. Does that work?
Yeah, it's good. Like I can remember this exercise in primary school where you had to put your right arm, if you were right-handed, in a sling for the entire day. Now, none of us have got time for that, and it will be inconvenient. But in life, something's going to happen to your body at some point. Hopefully not, but it might. And it's a way of accessing your creativity.
Yeah, we will.
So I like this. 15 minutes a day. It's going to feel like a very long time. And it could be music.
It will. I feel like it.
You could be writing music. You could be writing poetry. You could be painting, or you could be writing song lyrics, or anything else. But try and.
So whatever your art is, you can stay with that. We're not going to take that away from you. If you're a visual artist, do it with your left hand. If you're a poet, your left hand. If you're writing music, whatever you're doing, do it with your left hand. I actually think that that's a beautiful exercise in and of itself.
It's like get comfortable being uncomfortable, because there's some incredible thing in that. There's some incredible learning in being being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
I think it's not that I want to hear your second exercise, but I just don't want to give anyone an out.
No, I like
I'm thinking they should just do that. Let's
leave it there.
Let's leave it with that. And one other thing I want to ask you about before we leave.
Yeah.
Because I want to clear my memory or make sure I'm getting this right. Because there's so much goddamn, I'm just in a lot of ways I'm really complicated, but in other ways I pulled a really easy, I'm a straight white dude from the South. Pulled that when I was born, and I haven't had to think about many, many things in life. And now we're in an era where a lot of that is up for grabs. People are questioning things that I never. It's for someone like me. It's almost it's almost like an inconvenience. I settled this when I was born. Do we have to talk about this anymore? And you have fought males and females in your in your martial arts. Do I remember this correctly? That there was an instance where you fought and won in your weight, then went up 1, maybe 2, and then ended up fighting the dudes. But you had to sign something that said you wouldn't take their belt. Am I crazy?
No, it wasn't taking their belt. No, but I did fight out of my weight category against males. There was a waiver.
Out of your own.
Yeah, so it was So
what was the waiver?
It was just a waiver that you weren't going to sue the organization that created the bout. A typical insurance kind of waiver for sports. Full contact sports competitions.
But did you have to sign that when you fought women?
It's standard these days. It's a little hazy to me, to be honest. I know I signed it for that tournament. It wasn't about giving up belts. It was just it was just a waiver.
You fought men in your weight division.
I fought men in my weight, but I fought men 25 kilos above my weight division, which is more common because I'm a lighter weight. I'm a middleweight.
Yeah. How'd you do?
I won most of those bouts. But again, I don't see gender. I don't use
this
intention.
Is why I'm asking about that.
I don't see gender. I see people, and I fight, and I see it more as a spiritual practice, which sounds crazy. I'm not talking about religion. No. I see it as an expression of my spirit. It's beyond physical. And so again, I go to infinity. It's very expansive. It's very self-expressive. And I've never seen gender. So for me, that wasn't a thing. The media jump on it. There's been a lot of talk about that, and they hype up the media, the titles of the articles. It wasn't about beating men. It was just me being myself. And I think some of my best fights have come out fighting against men. So I see that as a gift. That I was
Does it even feel like a different energy? Like if you're not recognizing gender, when you step in, it's a different energy.
It's a different energy. I don't acknowledge gender, but there's a very different energy and I'm a different fighter. And not all men, like we're talking at this level of competition.
Right.
Not my students who I'm teaching. But at this level of competition, there's a very different energy, and there's a very different fighter that I bring out of myself. Much more intense, much faster, much more aggressive. It's so much fun. It's play. For me, it's an expression in the form of play. No different to someone throws a ball at you and you catch it, or you're dancing with your dancing partner in tango and they adjust their right arm and your left arm moves appropriately. Fighting to me is an exchange of energy. And so, there is definitely a different energy if we want to talk about gender and categorize gender, but I've never seen things that way.
Yeah. Well, oddly, I think I'm not sure if I have either. It doesn't really register to to me, but I think we're in an era where everyone is thinking and talking about it so much that if I were the podcast that did that, I would do another 4 or 5 with you just on that, because I think that's fascinating. It is fascinating.
We could unpack. Yeah, we could unpack that topic. It's multidimensional,
and it's artistic as well. And it's really interesting. So we'll leave that.
I see that. That's shape-shifting, right? Like being able to, to me, it's a shape-shifting thing. It's like, again, looking at in the historical times where the shamans in society were also like, or the witch doctors were also the drags, or also, the performers and also the warriors. There was this whole crossover occurring, or they were called two-spirit people in some of the native Indian countries. So we could definitely, that's a big conversation.
Yeah. Well, so we'll leave that to someone else. I'm not qualified for it, but I just wanted to bring it up for a second, just because I think it's part of what is really inspiring about who you are and what you do, and how someone who's artistically, who's an artist can get something from that, both by not paying attention to it in a way. There are just people, and that's it. And there's you, and ultimately you're, to a degree, fighting against yourself no matter what you're doing. Your competition is against yourself. And well, I've said enough. It's really good to see you. You look good and fit. You feel good? Yeah,
feeling great. Thank you. It's great to see you as well. It's been a little while.
Yeah.
So pandemic.
Well, you should see the guns under this shit, but I covered it up because I didn't want to scare you.
I think I'd feel really intimidated. Thank you for being so considerate.
I want to make you feel good. In fact, did you see what my shirt says? It
Fantastic.
says
Lit Cage.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Love it.
All right. Well, take care of yourself, and I hope to see you back, and we'll catch up with you when we finally make it to Melbourne.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Take care.
All right. Cheers.
See ya.
Hi, if you're enjoying listening to Lightning Bugs, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps a lot. Thank you so much for watching Lightning Bugs on YouTube. Check out more episodes and subscribe if you have not already. You can also listen to Lightning Bugs wherever podcasts may be found.